Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3. So in episode 3, I did an inspection underneath the chassis, and I determined that over 90% of the rubberized wiring that's bad goes to the 3 IF cans. Yep, so you see they're removed. That'll give us an opportunity to take them apart, clean the mica. Look how dingy these are, right? The screws are probably rusted. That'll give us the opportunity to clean these things correctly and put them back together and put some good wiring. You can see this wire is just horrible. Same thing with this one. So that's good. It's a little tight under there, but once I get the caps done, we'll be okay. I did see our friend Don from Restore Old Radios did a process where he kind of loosely aligned the cans to 455. I thought that was pretty cool. So after I take these apart and clean the mica and clean the screws and all that good stuff, we're going to try that too. Why not? It's fun. On this chassis, I'm almost done. There was one spot here of rust, which I've put some navel jelly on. And I've got most of it cleaned with the exception of this tuning cap. And this tuning cap is the next thing to go. That's going to come off. It's going to get soaked and cleaned and put in the ultrasonic cleaner. And we're gonna make sure it's in great shape before we go further with it. And once we have this off and we have the speaker off, we're home free. We're ready to start reassembling the radio and getting it going here. One thing I did notice on this transformer, it's an interesting transformer. There's a metal cap here, and if you could see right here, it looks like it's tack soldered right here, one spot here, and there's one spot right here. And one thing I did notice is that there appears to be a little bit of leakage coming out of there. Now I did check the windings, and the windings are good. So I'm debating if I just unsolder that, take the top off, but I suspect that the tar that's in here is not going to let me take the top off, so I don't want to start messing with it. So I'm probably just going to leave it alone. I can simply clean and paint this thing, without taking it off. So there's no reason to disturb it. If it's working, it's good. I can simply clean it up and paint it and make it look presentable. So, but I did notice that whoever soldered this thing on did so crooked. It's not fully seated into the bottom, which makes me think at some point this thing was opened after the factory, but it's hard for me to tell. But we know that it works, so that's good. So, just taking a peek underneath, without the IF cans. Now you're going to still see some wires here that go for the IF cans, because I did leave wires hanging here, and I drew myself a detailed diagram. Right here you can see some more. So I know exactly where everything goes. And you got to remember, once I remove these caps, these electrolytic caps, we'll have a lot more room. One thing I want to note, in these old radios, like in this radio here, they're using a pair of 8 microfarad caps at 450. Well, when you replace these things, you don't have to replace them with an 8, right? You can replace them with a 22 or a 33 or a 47 microfarad cap. All that's going to do is reduce the hum. The reason why they used 8 is because these things were so large, you couldn't get a bigger one in here. There's no room, right? So now that the size of these things is basically nothing, we can add a higher value, and all that's going to really do is, it's a filter cap, right? It's going to reduce the hum in the radio and make the radio sound better. So if you're kind of new to the hobby and you're replacing these things, don't think you need to go with a pair of 8s here. Not the way it works. And it looks like over here we have a 12 microfarad, which I've never seen a 12 before, but that's okay. We're gonna replace that with something else anyway. But that's the reason why, guys. You don't have to go exactly with what's here. On these other, these regular capacitors, these waxy caps, yeah, you should get as close as you can. But there's going to be some values there that you can't find. So you have to go to the next highest thing. You got to remember, when these radios were built, they were made with sourced ingredients, whatever was able to be found. So now we have a little more flexibility in parts, and you can actually make the radio sound a little bit better. I was also looking at the resistors in this thing, and there's quite a few resistors all over the place, and I'm going to guarantee you that they're probably all out of tolerance, every one of them. So we're going to be probably looking at replacing those resistors as well. I see we have here an inductor right here. So we're gonna be looking at all this stuff and replacing what needs to be replaced, and doing so with modern components, and get this thing in much better shape. All right, so that's where we are. I shall come back when all of these Crayola crayons are gone. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, we've got our tuning cap off. Here she is. And then just for documentation purposes, it's relatively simple. There's one screw here, and there's a screw here that goes through and attaches with this acorn nut. So now you can see all this crap under here that we're going to clean, and we're going to continue the polishing process. And there's only 3 wires. There's one here that goes to the front section, one here that goes to the back section, and then there's a braided ground wire here that goes right to this ground. So not much going on as far as wiring goes, but it surely gives us lots and lots of room here to clean up. Okay? So we shall get to it. And by the way, this tuning cap is isolated from the chassis, as you would expect. And you'll see that there's some rubber standoffs here, which we will replace and make sure that they're good. We don't want this thing shorting out. Tuning cap is really not so bad. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the ultrasonic cleaner on it or not yet. We'll have to figure that out. And there is a separate tuning wire here, dial cord, just for this part. It wraps around this part and goes to this little pulley, and there's a spring in there. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do there. But she's removed. Okay. Be back. Okay, I'm going to record the disassembly of this tuning cap because I want to be able to document it. So it'll be a little long, but for any of you that have to do it, at least you'll know what to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the tuning cap is completely meshed and closed, which it is. And we're going to note that this wheel underneath here, which has 2 springs, the opening is right here. So it's at the 3 o'clock mark. There's also 2 set screws here, which are like a rectangular shape. There's no slot. So we're going to use this 3 32nd offset wrench to unscrew them. So let's do that, just to loosen them up. There you go. That was easy. Probably need a little bit more turn on there. There's one. And let's see what we got here. This one's being just a little stubborn. Let's see if that's enough clearance. That should be okay. Alright, good. Alright, so we've got those loose. Let's see if that will come off. There we go. So if I take this wheel off, and you also notice that the bolts are pointing at 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock. So the wheel comes off. Very good. It's really not rusty, which is a good thing. Now when I soak this thing and clean it, I don't want to put the dial string in there. So we're going to have to remove this mechanism, and we're going to have to document how that works. And just to close the loop, we've got this removed now. Okay, and we can clean it. It's a mess. And we're going to throw this thing in the ultrasonic cleaner and see what we could do with it. So take a good look at it. It's filthy. It'll look better when we're done. And just like that, we have a ultra clean tuning cap. Look how nice that looks. You know, and for me, here's the bracket, here's the flywheel. You know, one of the things that I generally look for in a restored radio is the tuning cap. There's just something about a clean tuning cap that tells me the radio's been taken care of. So I love this part. This is the part that says, yeah, this is good. So we're good here. We're going to let it dry for about 24 hours before we do anything with it. Then we're going to do some isolation testing. We all know where I've been burned before with that. And we're going to make sure that the stator is separate from the rotor. And then we'll reassemble it back together, and we'll be ready to put it back in the radio when the time comes. Of course, we're going to replace the wires that we used to connect it, which are one here and one here. These wires are going to get replaced because they are falling apart. But we're in great shape here. Next step is to get that speaker out of there. And then we're really ready to start messing around underneath that chassis and replace all the resistors and all the capacitors. That's what we're going to do. I am positive that those resistors are going to be out of tolerance, so why leave it there, right? If we're going to do a restore, let's do it right. Okay, be back. Okay, so I'm working on rewiring this particular can, and I think I showed you this one. This is the first one I did. And I found myself getting a little intimidated with these darn MICA domino caps. And I said, okay, let's learn what it's all about. So I'm going to try to share that with you in case it helps. So first of all, there's many different brands of these things. This one happens to be a Cornell Dubliner. And I did a search on the internet, and this is a 6-circle cap. And you'll see there's arrows that point you which direction you're going in. And I found this cheat card on the internet. I printed it on cardstock. And it's pretty self-explanatory. So the first dot is your first digit, second digit, third digit. Then you've got your working voltage, your tolerance, and your multiplier. So if we take a look at our cap here, our first dot is red. Okay? So if we come over here and look at our first dot, and we look at red, red is 2. So we're going to write a 2 here. Our second dot is blank, so we're going to go with brown, 1. Our third dot is orange. Orange is 3. Our fourth dot, which is right here, which is our working voltage, is brown. Working voltage on this chart with brown is 100 volts. The center dot here is the tolerance. Tolerance is brown. If I look at our chart, tolerance brown is 1%. And finally, we look at our last dot, which is again brown. There's no paint in it. It's our multiplier. And the brown multiplier is 10. Okay? So essentially what we need to do is we need to take 213 times 10. Pretty simple, right? That leaves us with 2130. MMFD. That's how these things were measured. Now if we look at a chart, which I happen to have here, you'll see that there's 2000 MMFD and 2200 MMFD. We know this one is somewhere in the middle. So we're going to go with 2200. It's close enough. We have a tolerance of 10%, so we can of 1%. So we're going to be in there close enough. And a 2200 MMFD equates to a 2.2 nanofarad, which also equates to a 0.0022 microfarad cap. So we know that we can replace this with a 0.0022. And if you look at your capacitor charts that you have, you'll know that that a 0.0022 is equal to a 222J right here. And we're just going to confirm that. I want to make sure I'm not talking out of school. That's correct. It's a 222K 630 volt. Now this is way over the 100 volts that I need, but it's okay. So we're going to take this out and replace it with this. But just for giggles, I want to measure this thing and see what it looks like. Now I know this is very delicate, and I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to be doing a lot of pigtailing and J-hooking here. So we're going to cut this out. One there. We're going to make sure we don't cut the thin wires. And one here. Okay? So here's our cap. We know that it's supposed to measure about 2130 microfarads or 2.2 nanofarads, right? So we know what it's supposed to measure. Let's get our capacitance meter, which is right here. And we're going to connect this thing and see what it looks like. And then we'll know if we made a wise move in just cutting that out of there. So this meter is meant just for capacitance. And if you don't have one of these, you should get it. It doesn't need to be an expensive model. So we're going to take one end here and connect it to the alligator clip. One end here let's turn this on and see what we got. So we know it's supposed to be about 2 nanofarads. So it looks like we're way out of tolerance on this thing. Anybody want a bird? Well, look at that, it's rising. Interesting. So it looks like it's about 3 nanofarads. So with a 1% tolerance, not good. Now I saw Don from Restore Old Radios had demonstrated that if you put pressure on these things, and you'll know if they're good or not. So I'm taking a pair of pliers and putting pressure on the MICA cap, and it's not moving. That generally means that the cap is probably good. It's just out of tolerance, right? We know that there's a sheet of mica in there. It actually went up a little bit when I squeezed here. But that just indicates that there's probably some air in there or some movement. Let's see what happens here. No, it's pretty solid. So just this one area right here appears to be a little flaky. But needless to say, it's out of tolerance anyway, so we're going to replace it. We just know that we'll have a much better experience with the can if we do it that way. So, don't be afraid of these dominoes. There's charts out there, there's all different models. There's Cornell, Dubliners, Dubliers is the right way to say it. And there's Aerovox, and there's all kinds out there. So find the color chart, print it on a cardstock, keep it handy. Don't be afraid of this stuff, it's easy. And you know, replacing this with this is a piece of cake. We're just going to use the coil method, and we're going to slip it right over these posts, and then we're going to change the wires as well using the coil method. So, piece of cake. All right, just wanted to share that. You know, just for kicks, I put the new capacitor on here to see what I get, and I get perfectly. It's 2.14. So this cap is a little bit out of tolerance, which is good because we needed 2.13. So this is a perfect cap to throw in there. All right, thanks. So all of our IF cans are completed, and I've started working on this push button assembly, and I actually did take it apart. This thing was just completely ratty. There was rust on it. The springs inside needed to be cleaned. Everything was just a real mess. So we've given it a good soak in some Vaporust, and then we put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, and she looks really, really good. So I've just cleaned off these terminals, and we're going to reattach the trimmer pots there. And all I'm going to really do here is just replace all these wires and put things back together. Of course, I made a diagram so I know what wires go where. And then this thing will be good shape. The power switch right here didn't suffer at all by being in the bath, so it's working well. I also put a little WD-40 around here just to get the moisture out. So we're going to reassemble this thing, and then this thing will be ready to put in the radio when we're ready. And it works really, really good. I am going to use a little bit of lithium grease right down here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a spring and there's like a lever that in there that latches like that. Okay, and all these contacts have been cleaned, so we're in great shape. So I'll go put this back together. Okay, the push button assembly is all back together again. I still have a few wires here that I'll need to change when I reinstall it. But everything's been cleaned, everything is connected to the trimmer pots. I made sure I used different color wire for the top connections versus the bottom connections. And in case you're wondering how it works, it's odd, even here. So it's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I got all the blues on top, all the blacks on the bottom, and we're good to go. There's 5 connections on each side. So this is all ready to go. I am still going to put a little bit of oil and lithium grease in here, and I think we'll be ready to go, but she runs real smooth now, like that. And I want to try to do a couple of connectivity tests and see if I can pick up something. I'm not exactly sure how this thing functions, but I'll figure that out in a moment. So if I figure it out, I'll let you know. Thanks. I just wanted to do a quick shout out here to Don at Restore Old Radios. When he does his restores, he mentions that he uses this Mother's mag and aluminum polish. And I never heard of it before, so I went out and got some. And look at the job it does on these IF cans. And I've got fingerprints on them. I didn't use gloves yet. But I also did it on the chassis. And I don't know if you could see how shiny that is, or it just looks like a dull spot to you. But there's a real look at that. Let's see if I turn the light off if you could see it. You see the reflection on there? That's amazing. I've never seen anything that cleans up a chassis like that. This stuff is it's relatively inexpensive, and it's a soft cream, and it's not hard to do. You just put a little bit on a rag like that. Let's do an area here so we could show you and demonstrate. But I got to give kudos to Don for talking about this during his videos. This stuff is awesome. And you're going to put a little work into it. Now, I think what Don did with his is he used a Scotch-Brite pad, a very fine one, and I'm probably going to end up doing that too. But let's see what we get out of this. It says in the directions, if you don't see a black residue, stop, because it means it's not a polishable metal. But I am seeing a black residue, so we're good to go. Well, let's just take a quick peek at that. We'll buff it out. My Lord, look at that. I really wish you could see how much that's a shine. It's amazing. You can see the reflection of my finger in there. Isn't that cool? Shout out to Don. I know what I'm going to be doing with this chassis. I'm going to be polishing it up. It's going to look brand new. Be back. Okay, for the most part, we have this thing recapped. The only cap I haven't done yet, there's one here that's buried. And there's one inside this brick, which I'm going to figure out what to do with that. But everything else has been recapped. I've got the new electrolytics in place. And you can see there's one right here. And there's two right here. I did replace the 8 microfarad electrolytics with 22. And this was a 12. I replaced it with a 16. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I did have to replace a bunch of resistors as well. These two over here are way out of tolerance. I'm just checking a few more here. I also reinstalled one of the cans, and we'll show you what that looks like. I just did one because it was critical to this section. And let's flip this over, and you'll see there's our can. That's one of them. And you see how nice the chassis is coming out with the mother's mag and aluminum polish. Really, really good. A little bit more work to do on that, but she looks really nice. So we're making good progress. All right, so the next thing for me to do is get the rest of these caps done, and then we're going to reinstall the cans. Here's another can that's been polished and cleaned. We're going to reinstall the cans, and then we're going to reinstall the tuning cap right there, and then we're going to be ready to do this thing to do an initial power up and test it. But we've got a way to go for that yet. So I think I'll end the episode here because I've got quite a bit of content in this video. In the next video, we'll pick up with the other two cans installed, the tuning cap installed, and we'll start doing some preliminary preparation for the power up, including replacing the power cord. Here's what's left of what's there, and we'll go through some of the procedures. Now, I did pre-align the cans to 455 kilocycles, but we know they're going to drift once we put them in the radio. But they should be pretty close, so I shouldn't have to do a major alignment just to get it to work. But we'll get there when we get there. So that's it for this episode. And again, really happy with the way this chassis is coming out with that polish. Really good stuff. Okay, folks, we'll see you in the next episode. Happy 4th of July.